Hello, welcome to Facebook Live and Instagram Live. My name is Adelene Cheong. So today I thought we'll have a conversation around teaching and practicing yoga online. In particular, I'm just seeing of recent last few weeks there's been increased number of online offerings. And I've been having several conversations with different friends and peers, other teachers and students about how do we safely practice and also teach via this medium. Obviously, nothing replaced a live class where we are in person with the student. Hi, Amy, welcome. Hi, Daddy. Louise, Berenice, welcome. So what I wanted to start off with is to say that yes, that it is an appropriate time now that we discuss about this topic of what are your experiences as much as teaching and practicing online. It is a new learning experience for me too. And I very much welcome your participation in contributing how you have so far managed or received feedback from various participants and your students. I don't claim to know all the answers, but that's why I open up this conversation to have a short discussion with you all. Hi, Steph. Hi, Joe. Yeah, welcome. So, firstly, it's also a big question for me to actually consider. I've been reflecting, considering where does the responsibility lie when we go online and start practicing, not just teaching, but also as a practitioner, as a student, to practice online. Where does the responsibility lie? Is there any liability waiver that we need to sign off to relinquish our liability in practicing online? How do we safeguard or probably feel safe in practicing online via this medium? Is it even possible to actually warranty safety online? Hi, Boyun, Isabel. Hi, Francis. So one of the things that I wanted to say is yoga traditionally, we all know that, we say that it's traditionally offered in a setting where it's one-to-one. And when I think about that setting and learning and apprenticeship, it really depends on the intention. It really depends on the intention, which then defined how we would exchange, how we would choose the medium of exchange or the attitude or the preparation for this exchange between the teacher and the student. Whilst obviously in the past few decades that yoga has been offered in group classes, in studios, where there is an intention to serve a wider group of people who are interested in yoga. And again, it depends on the objective, the intention of offering it through that medium, through a bigger group, different capacity, versus if it's a one-to-one setting. So here now, we're talking about online rather than in person, and it could also be in a one-to-one setting that we're talking about, or a group setting. And both has its consideration that I've noticed. I've been teaching also online to one-to-one private students, as much as group classes, and also teacher trainings where it's more of a lecture, discussion, and explanation of a topic and investigation of a topic. Hi, Julie. Hi, Catherine, Ingrida. Thanks for joining. Hi, Mom. And what I've written here is online offering. Nowadays, there's just so many different channels. I mentioned briefly, firstly, to consider whether it's a one-to-one or a group. But there's just so many mediums and channels that we can choose to offer this through this medium, through Facebook Live, through even WhatsApp video, FaceTime, YouTube, Zoom. It's one that many yoga teachers and studios are also using, and various different mediums. How do we choose which one, whether it's safe to teach through those medium or to practice through those medium? I don't know. I don't have the answer, but what I've found is that firstly is to consider the word safe. Like when someone says, do you feel safe to practice online or to teach online? Are you referring to physical safety? Like physically, is it safe to offer online teachings, yoga through this medium? Or is it emotional safety? Is it mental emotional safety to actually trust across the screen that I'm still able to nourish and honor and practice safely that way? What is your idea? When you've heard me so far said these things about different mediums, about physical safety or emotional safety, what are some of your thoughts and ideas that immediately come up right now that you could contribute to share? Hi Kiki. Hi Sarah, Nia. And one of the things that I've noted is depends on the environment. For me, at least to feel safe to practice or to teach, but especially as a student to practice, I feel safe when I'm being given the freedom or option to choose, as and when I need to take pause or rest or opt out from certain offerings. I mean, I'm saying that also as I grew up in Southeast Asia, there is the education system is one of more of a authoritarian system. I survived, but constantly seeking approval and assurance through that education system. So emotional safety is high priority. Yeah. So I feel apprehensive, safe in the practitioner, safe if the practitioner has experience in yoga. Yeah, the experienced teacher on the other side of the screen. Yeah, thank you for that contribution. We'll definitely talk about it a little bit more. I like to see the whole body of students. This makes me feel at ease as to what to suggest to the students to try for safe practice. Yeah, to be able to see the other person, the setting up, the preparation for online offering. Teaching is slow enough in order to emphasize the breath, and therefore a chance for the other person to, or the practitioner or yourself, to pay attention. Seeing the whole body. Choice is super important. Yeah, having choices for the student is super important. Amy was saying. So I was saying a moment ago that when I was growing up, that environment that is out of probably discipline and fear, and that teacher says and you follow and you do, it somewhat it takes away the confidence within me to be able to freely explore, or it dampens the creativity part of my expression, to be able to try new things, because there's a set rule for doing something, or there's a set answer to the question that we are attempting to solve. Seeing the whole body. Someone say, yeah, non-assumptive. This is also one of the things that I noted, language non-assumptive, because we can never know what the other person's feeling or experiencing in the moment. And one of the things that for me to feel safe too, I'm speaking from my experience, and I'm welcoming you to continue contribute your experience in terms of teaching and practicing online. One of the things that I needed is to know that I'm being supported by others who are more experienced, like some of you have mentioned earlier, by another practitioner who has more experience, whilst have given the space and encouragement to learn, to explore. Finding instructions needs to be slower and clearer. So in terms of how we verbalize instructions or demonstration. So I'll talk about demonstration in a moment. But so far what I've been sharing and what I really want to communicate through this that I find helpful for myself is to have conscious intent, to really evaluate and reflect on what's my intention for offering, for teaching, or to practice, the intent to practice right in that moment of engaging with the other person across the other side of the screen. And when I am able to reconnect with the intent in that moment, more than likely I will stay true, commit to that intent, and stay true to my value, in that moment, my commitment to myself. Always start saying, I trust you, you are in charge of your own body. Yes, and that really, thank you for sharing that, Francis. And that really allows the students to feel that autonomy that they have, that they could actually honor and follow what they are experiencing in that moment. Hi, Winya. Now, I was saying conscious intent, therefore, depending on the intention and therefore the exchange. So the intention determines how the exchange is going to take place, the relationship between the teacher and student, and also the process, how it's being set up, how it's being organized and managed. Now, let's talk about what does it mean by safety. For some of you already shared in terms of physical safety and also emotional safety. But what does it take for you to feel safe when you practice in a class in general? Apart from a few that's mentioned, to have clear instructions, to be able to see the other person across the screen, demonstration. And one thing about demonstration that I wanted to speak, especially from the teacher's point of view, if you're teaching, is to be able to demonstrate, to offer variations, demonstrate the most modest, accessible option, because we never know what the other person is perceiving on the other side of the screen, or their ability. And therefore, I often would demonstrate several options, but also I would suggest that this would be an equally perfect, appropriate option to enjoy the benefit of the pose or movement. And I myself would choose that modest variation for demonstration, and also possibly demonstrating the do's and also the don'ts, or what to avoid, so that students could actually see that, oh, okay, be mindful not to overarch into the lower back or twisted the knees and in any specific position. Set up the context at the beginning of the class, asking students to modify or back out of the posture if any pain. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Baroness, any pain or discomfort. Yep. Jenny says to be fully present during the practice and trust my own body. Yes, from a student's perspective, as a student practicing as well, to pay attention. So some of the things that I have listed down for as a teacher teaching, and then we'll talk about as a student practicing also. Firstly, consider, yes, the intention of why you are doing this, why you're delivering, why you're teaching, to continue to share, to support others, to support your students and community. Therefore, decide the medium for delivery, because if there's something that you would like to share with the mass public, it could potentially be pre-recorded and posted on YouTube, right? Whereas if you are wanting something that's more interactive, or if it's a one-to-one that is a little bit more therapeutic and interactive and personalized, then more than likely I would choose either FaceTime or Zoom, where it's more of a closed channel, whilst we have the exchange and the person could actually speak back. I could see the other person could see clearly how I demonstrate in the position also. For both the student, so Catherine was saying, for both the student and teacher, in order for both to feel the experience is safe and appropriate, it really builds with time. Yes, it takes time and familiarity. Yeah. Hi, Simon. Hi, Sarah. Yeah. So, firstly, I mentioned about the medium that you're choosing to deliver, whether it's by Skype, whether it's by Zoom. So choose appropriately what's the intention of the session that you're teaching, and whether it's a one-to-one or group, and that also determines how you're gonna choose your delivery or the medium or channel. If it's a group, then capacity. What would be a comfortable capacity that you would like to have in class? Whereas if it's in an open channel like YouTube, I mean, it will just be something that you pre-recorded. Anyone can watch it anytime in their own space, time. You won't be able to interact with the other person. Whereas if it's in Zoom, for example, that I've been using for my online classes this few weeks, we can set the capacity, how many people that you are allowed in to the group, in order for you to be able to see each person's practice, because there are little squares and gallery view that you could see each other. So determine the capacity that you feel comfortable to interact with. And also governing this security and privacy, especially if recording, because there will be some sessions, especially if it's a private session, and sometimes group session, depending. If the session is recorded for the students' keeping, for the students' reference, for the students' practice, then let the student know that this session is being recorded, and tell them why you're doing it and what you're going to do with that recording. So there will be some sections of, for example, my Yoga Nidra classes that I record, part of the practice session of the Yoga Nidra recording, and that's really just for audio recording, not visual, so you don't see any face and the other person, participant, or no one will be talking as well, being recorded talking in that recording. So it's really just my voice and the Yoga Nidra practice session, which then later I could share with participants or for my own record keeping. So consider if your session is being recorded or not. Hi, Sophie. In a group, I learned early on to ask participants to place their camera so that I can see them and I'm not looking at their ceiling. Yes, that's in the preparation part that I'll like to talk about. Yes, Francis. Limit to 6 students, Berenice says, so I can see what they're doing. Yes. More than this, I think I would not be able to give individual feedback. Yeah, depends on your computer screen. So it really depends on how you feel comfortable managing the size and capacity when you're teaching online. So the part about camera setting and all, one of the things that I do when prior to an online session, whether it's a private or group, I send them a preparation, like just 3 steps of preparation, what to expect, what to do with their camera, with their yoga props and mat. So preparation in terms of setting up the space so that it's a space that's uninterrupted. Preparing props if you think potentially you'll use some bolsters or blocks or blanket, so let them know in advance so that they can prepare that instead of spending like 10 minutes looking for props in the middle of your delivery or your class. The device, setting up of the device, so make sure that the battery is charged up. Find a space where the device could be far enough that you could see the whole mat space, especially if you want to be able to see your student. Like earlier, Barbara was suggesting to make sure that the device and the camera is able to see the full mat or wherever they're practicing. And also where you will be demonstrating. If I'm demonstrating, I want to be far enough to be able to see my whole mat or the demonstration of my full body. From a teaching point of view, online live, I feel it's almost like emphasizing, exaggerating what I would do in an in-person class. Yes, thanks, Louis. That's it. Signposting also. Yeah, it may feel a little strange to you as a teacher, but feedback from students participating ranges from so professionally done to very clear. Yeah, so that they can trust the process. So preparation of devices, props are important. If you're using Zoom, ask your students to pre-download Zoom because there's an app, so they don't spend the first 10 minutes of the class downloading and trying to get set up and get into the meeting room. I mean, Zoom call it the meeting room. Teach skill assist. Yeah, and there are challenges and limitations to teaching online, but we are doing what we can based on what we have, and also choosing appropriate content to share, and choosing appropriate variation so that it's, especially if we have not worked with the student or work very few time spent with the same student, that you haven't got a full history of the student, to offer the opportunity to opt out, to offer variations that is more accessible. Signposting is saying things. Yeah. Okay. I mentioned already briefly to offer option to participate as much or as little. So this I speak about at the beginning of every of my class, whether it's in the studio when I'm teaching live, workshop, or here online also. At the beginning of class, I often would start off by sharing with the student that everything offered in class is optional, that everything I say or demonstrate or suggest is a suggestion for exploration, that it is not an instruction that you have to follow through just because you're in the space, just because you've decided to join me in class. That if there are moments that you need to take time out for yourself or simply watch, take notes, feel free to opt out and take time for yourself to learn through listening or through watching instead of participating in that moment. So it requires the student as much as the teacher to pay attention. So as a student, later on I'll mention also that pay attention to your experience. And as a teacher, I would encourage the student to do that. I would encourage the student to say that I don't know. It would be a delusion for me to assume how you feel and assume how you experience your body in that moment. And therefore, I I encourage the student to share with me, to tell me what's happening in their body, or at least pay attention so that they can respond appropriately. Yep. Hi, Celine. Welcome. And consider teaching intention. This is something that I often pause and review myself, and that is in person, live, or online. What I meant by the intention is I ask myself literally in that moment, is what I'm about to say or do support the student's practice experience and learning? Or does what I'm about to say or do arise from a place of ego? So let me repeat that. Thus, what I'm about to say or do supports the student's learning experience, versus does what I'm about to say or do arises from a place of ego, that to demonstrate that I know one thing more than the other person, or that I'm more experienced in some way. So if you take a moment to consider a recent exchange, whether as a student or as a teacher, that gesture of offering an adjustment or suggestion, whether it's through words or hands-on. And if you were to consider if the exchange in that moment were to correct the student, to correct a pose or position, or in that moment I'm exploring options to investigate with the student as an exchange rather than a one-way download, that this way is right and that way please change it, and which means when I hear that as a student, as much as if I hear that from a teacher, right, that it means what I'm doing is wrong, what you're saying is right, and it dampens my confidence firstly, and I'm less likely to trust myself in that moment if I feel intimidated. So that takes away the opportunity for me to demonstrate respect. And if I want to teach the student to respect their own experience and their body, I need to demonstrate it also that way through teaching, by maybe asking for an opportunity or a space for the exchange. Would you be willing to try a suggestion? Or probably sometimes I might, because I'm literally curious, I would actually ask the student, are you trying a different variation here? Are you modifying for a specific reason? Especially if I'm seeing something that is that I probably haven't communicated, or they're doing completely different thing from what's being offered in class. And I'm truly curious in that moment to ask the student, are you modifying? Are you making this change for a certain reason? And then maybe I myself would learn one thing about modifying for that condition or for that particular intention. And maybe the students would in that moment would tell me that, yes, I am modifying for myself for this, or the student might say, oh, I thought I understood you this way, and that I have an opportunity to clarify that what I've communicated a moment ago, it's needed more clarification, needed more clarity. Yeah, thank you. Assumption, I think earlier Nadia was raising this point already about, and I mentioned also earlier that it would be a delusion for me to assume that I know how the other person feel in that moment, or the other person's experience in that moment. And therefore, I often have to ask feedback from the student as to how is it feeling in this moment. especially I hear this quite often when students ask, am I in the right position? Am I doing this right? And honestly, in that moment, I don't know. I would actually tell the student, I don't know, but how does it feel in your body? Where do you feel in your body in that moment? What's happening? What's your experience right now? Does it feel, is there any discomfort, or what is your experience that trigger you to ask that question? And truly in that moment when I'm able to have that exchange, then more than likely it will be a learning opportunity for both of us, for the student and the teacher. So for clarification for both student and teacher. Yeah, for students to have a mic on in Zoom, I generally, that's a very specific question before I continue what I want to share. So Amy was asking whether we want to have the students' mic switched on in Zoom. So I generally would mute all participants when they join the group. And when one would like to speak, they would just unmute themselves so that I know when to cue them in. Firstly, to avoid any background noise, especially we're practicing at home, there might be babies or cat and pets and people and other interference. So when there are like 20 mics switched on, there might be just lots of background noise that interfere with listening. So I would generally mute everyone, but if someone is ready to speak or wants to express or speak, then I'll say unmute yourself so that I know when I can call you in to speak in turns, right? So that can be done to, like you can mute all also in Zoom. You're like Natasha was saying, she would so much appreciate an online course for this, how to teach and practice online. Have been conscious that it might deter them from speaking. Well, when they are ready to speak, they can unmute themselves so that you know that they are waiting to speak. Or probably there is an option also in Zoom that you can like kind of raise your hand, wave, So I mentioned earlier also as teachers that we do actively invite the students to pay attention. Therefore, sharing the responsibility that they too are meeting me halfway as I'm offering something, they are also bringing 50% to the game, like 50-50. We are exchanging a learning process. Now, another point I wanted to make is students come to class for various different reasons. Whilst as teacher, we have a responsibility to hold a safe container and safe space for students' healing and growth. Students may have different projection, and especially when it's online, it's unless you have a separate discussion one-to-one with each student, I would appreciate that I have an email exchange maybe before in advance with individual students, especially if it's a private one-to-one. So do encourage your student to pay attention, because there'll be so many other things that maybe the student did not mention at the beginning or forgot to mention, or they themselves don't even know whether they should be expressing that to you as a teacher, to the teacher. So I'm a beginner in yoga. Can I ask you, how do you deal with students who has a desk job? What is the first pose for him? I would like to probably take this question separately, as I'm focusing on the topic on learning online rather than what to teach, as in the content to teach. So I'm most happy for you to email me directly, drop me a message on my website, and to have this conversation specifically for students with desk job, sedentary job. Yeah, thank you. Now, as students, oh, there's another question here. Sophie was saying, how much do you practice with the students and how often do you go close to the computer to check? I'm trying to find the right balance. Okay. So in terms of having to look at the students, so what I tend to do is I would say, please watch now, I'm demonstrating. So I'll demonstrate, I don't need to practice with them at the same time. So I'll demonstrate the do's, the don'ts, and options, variations, and then I'll come close to the screen and say, like, do you understand what I've just demonstrated? Let's do this, and I'll guide them through verbally also. So they have a rough visual of it, but more importantly, they are not copying how it looks like across the screen, but more so how it feels like in the body, which is a very different learning pedagogy of not Simon say, Simon do thing. It's not a copying of what it looks like visually. And I'll demonstrate in a moment also when we come into just a moment of experiencing languaging and teaching across screen. But I want to quickly touch on as a student practicing across the screen online. There's so many options out there from studios, from different teachers. Firstly, it's preparation for the practice. Preparation in terms of, yes, the device that you have, make sure the battery is well charged, charged to full for you to have an uninterrupted session. The space is clear, and there is no interruption from family members or people that share the same space. Preparation of your props. I think some of the things also are mentioned earlier. Ideally, the teacher would also give some guidance as to what to prepare for, what are the props that might potentially be helpful for the session, if any. I would also make sure that I've been to the toilet and I don't need to, like, in the middle of the class then skip in and out and all. So that's just small little things, but preparation. And also consider the intention for the practice as a student. So why are you getting online? Is it to simply learn a few specific learning points as a lecture, or is it simply to enjoy the practice and just experiential practice of it? And therefore, how would you choose to honor that intention as you continue following the session online? Hi, Matt. Yeah. And when as a student, when I'm practicing online, I'm also thinking, if that's my intention and therefore I'm choosing to commit to myself for, maybe it's for self-nourishment, for health, right? And I would commit and stay true to my intention regardless. So if it means I need to take pause, if it means that I am doing completely a different position because I'm modifying for my condition or my experience, so be it, because my intention is to nourish this body, is to support my health and well-being. So pay attention to your experience and intention in the practice in that moment as students. And the other thing to note, and this is what my teacher also often say, just because someone is in your class, this is for the teacher, or as a student, just because you are in a yoga class or online class, it does not mean that you completely relinquish your autonomy to the other person. that you are a responsible individual that can make a choice and option for you to choose otherwise. So you suggest making a difference between practicing and learning. Well, it can be a combination of both, of practicing and learning experience, if you want to take notes. So it depends on your intention, and that's why as a student, when you join a session or even in a live class for that matter, that if in that moment it serves you to simply sit back, watch, observe, take notes, rather than practicing, why are you choosing to do that? Know what's the reason for you to choose to take notes instead of practicing. Or if you are diving in and really getting into the experience of it, then will take off temporarily take off the head of wanting to take notes and memorize everything, and really be in the experience and pay attention to moment to moment changes. In a studio, yeah, same thing. If it's in a studio class, if there is intention that you would like to maybe take some notes and all, have your little notebook next to your mat, which is fine. But maybe I would say park yourself more on the sides of the room or the back of the room, so that it's not disrupting the rest of the class. Because obviously, if you're attending a group practice class, a lot of people are coming in to practice. And therefore, I do honor that there will be teachers, teacher trainees also in group classes that they wanted to learn, maybe sequencing, maybe modification. But know that the intention of the class being offered is not as a lecture or training, and therefore if there are other practitioners in the class that might potentially get distracted because someone's taking notes, then I would say I would still welcome you to do what you need to do for yourself in terms of learning, but somewhat respect others by parking yourself maybe on the sides of the room or the back of the room, so it's not that like distracting if it's right in front of the room also. Yeah, Amika was saying, as I listening, the ethics online are not very different than the ones in physical classes. Yeah, I agree, yes. And what changed online is that our attention is taken by technical issue, yes. And therefore the preparation part is really helpful, I find, in terms of setting up very simple things in terms of just making sure that your device is well charged and there's enough light to be able to see you clearly also. I want to quickly go through two or three more things, and then would like to guide you through a practice to experience it emotionally and physically, how it feels like when you hear words and how words land in your body and experience. Yeah, this is important, which is to trust yourself first. As a student, to trust yourself first. And this is what Judith, my teacher, often say, trust yourself first, not only, but first, so that you can have that autonomy and freedom to honor and to honor your experience in that moment. Hi, Louise, good to have you. And when we set an intention for our practice as student also, that you stay loyal to your higher allegiance, that it is not to be relinquished just because there is another person that you think has a high authority in the space, that this is a co-created space for learning to support each other. And that's really the explanation, the word namaste at the end of class, right? That it's really an exchange between two authentic human beings during the process of yoga practice. I do highly recommend Donna's book. She has written extensively about teaching ethics. Might not be specific to online, but definitely lots of insights that we could refer to and understand from different point of view, from the teacher's point of view, from the student's point of view, from a studio owner's point of view. The book that I'm mentioning is called Teaching Yoga. Oh, it's the other way around. So I'll read it. It's Teaching Yoga by Donna, Frye. Yeah, exploring the teacher-student relationship. So that really has a lot of inspiration and guidance in terms of how I teach and share yoga with students, whether that is live or online. Okay, so I'd like to now guide you through some experience to see how words and or probably some offering that I might be speaking to you across the screen land in your body, how it feels physically and emotionally as we move into the beginning of the practice. It's usually at the beginning of the practice that I would set the space and sharing. So I'd like to invite you, I love that. I'd like to invite you to simply find a position to whether sit or lie down to reflect. When you're ready, just give me a little thumbs up and then I'll start to officially teach online. So some of you are on Insta Live, some of you are on Facebook Live. Yeah. So get comfortable. You can be lying down, you can be seated. It's an initial setting of intention and also an agreement for the exchange, but also agreement with yourself as you begin the practice. Thumbs up. Ready? Okay. So take a moment to settle into the position that you've chosen. With no specific instruction. So at the beginning of my invitation to you, the very first invitation is there is no instruction, that you are welcome as you are. Nothing needs to change or be different for you to begin this practice. Notice how those words land in your body and if it's resonate with you or you would prefer something else. Just taking a moment of pause to meet yourself where you are. And I'd like to say that everything I'm about to say or offer or demonstrate in class is optional. That in fact I highly encourage you to pay attention, to modify, to adapt, to make changes, to honor your experience, which may change and shift from moment to moment. So I encourage you to pay attention. And if there are sensation or experiences that is less familiar, that you would like to check in with me, let me know, attract my attention, so that we can investigate together. And that includes the length of time you choose to stay in a position or engage in a movement. So take a moment now to revisit your intention for the practice. Why did you show up for your yoga practice? And what are you attempting to serve in this moment? It's not about serving someone else, but in this moment for yourself, what is of highest value to you right now for this practice? And holding this intention throughout your practice, staying true and honor and respect this intention, that anything that comes in the way of allowing you to stay true to this intention, please make changes. Please allow yourself ample space, time to reconnect to your higher allegiance. So there I would like to then begin offering the practice sequence, or if it's a movement-based practice, or a restorative practice, or teaching. And versus if in this moment that I am asking students to watch and do what is being offered in class with very little space for them to explore, it somewhat inhibits their growth and learning process. At least the person might be still learning, but through strict, out of fear of not being approved otherwise. So pay attention to how you feel when you hear those words, and how does it reflect in your practice as a student when you hear it. It doesn't need to be word for word what I've just said, but the feeling and experience, sense of it, and hopefully that land well. Otherwise, please do share with me how does it land in your body. When I was sharing a moment ago, just a few minutes of that. So how are we doing? Let's come back to the screen. That was just a few minutes of me sharing how I would open a class and invite students to pay attention, to participate, to honor their experience that may shift from moment to moment. One of the things to request your students to do, which we do in live classes, is to ask students to switch off their phone, airplane mode, or leave it in the changing room. But here online, to remind your students to make sure that other devices, their phone, we might have a couple of devices, and the phone and other interruptions are switched to airplane mode, or at least it's not interrupting the practice experience. So how are you? Any final questions or contributions or sharing comments of today's discussion? So Steph was saying, I like the idea that we do not propose an intention as teachers, but ask them to think about their intention. And I hear you, Steph. I say that because I might come with very different intention. as a student, I show up in a class, I might have very different things, ideas that I have for myself, maybe just to relax my mind, and or maybe to release my lower back and things. And therefore, if that's my intention, I'll stay true to the intention, whatever it takes for me to stay true to my intention. Yeah. Any other question about our discussion today, or comments or experience a moment ago when I was sharing the opening, just a few minutes of opening? So Barbara was saying, I really like the question, why did you show up to class today? Yeah, so that really refocuses the student to pay attention to the reason for showing up, the reason for being there, present. Oh, thank you, Amika. Your words are an invitation to come back to my body and breath. Yes, so an invitation, it's not a coercion. That the invitation is out of love and passion, and is not out of authority and fear, and out of needing someone else's approval, which I've experienced both system of education, and I really felt the difference in how it would ignite my potential for creativity and to be able to express myself freely. Allowing it to be just as it is. Yes, that is how I also appreciate and welcome and allow myself to, when I myself lie down on the mat to begin my practice, I simply welcome and invite myself onto the mat as it is, without any presumption, without any expectation of where I should be or what I should be in order to receive this practice, in order to deserve this practice. Yeah, thank you for saying that, Francis. Okay, so that concludes our discussion for today. Language as a teacher. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, maybe we'll have another discussion about languaging. It's actually in my radar that I really wanted to share the pedagogy of teaching yoga, which is inspired by Donna, my teacher, for years of receiving her teaching, that I'd like to share with you at some point. So we'll see. Check out this space. Next week, this time, I would like to talk about Shavasana, the why, what, which variations of Shavasana. There's so many options to Shavasana. So I'd like to share that with you next week. So if you are available and interested, join me same time here next week, and let's talk about Shavasana and practice Shavasana. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Berenice, Francis, Barbara, Amy. Thank you, Joy. Yeah, really, really heartfelt warmth. I'm really feeling this community here with you through this channel of communicating, and I'm honored to be serving you through Facebook Live and Instagram Live. Oh, so happy. Yeah. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. If you haven't already, check out the online classes that I offered. It's free, it's donation based, every Tuesday and Friday. It's on my website, so please join me, and that's in Zoom. That's where we can have a more direct experience of teaching or practicing across screens. So please do find some of the information on my website. Thank you. Yes. Namaste, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and sunshine.